Well, welcome everyone. We're here today with a special video interview. We're going back to the age of Zoom. Do you remember that? And we are with Mark Standriff and Nico. And pronounce your name for us, Nico. Is it DiViccaro?
It's DiViccaro, like
DiViccaro.
DiViccaro.
I will remember it from now on. And you are both appearing in the current Good Company Players production of Amadeus at Second Space Theater. And for those of you in the community who have seen this production already, you know that it is a triumph and it's also a workout for both of you. Uh, Particularly for you, Mark. You're on stage pretty much the whole time, and the show
Yeah.
clocks in at close to 3 hours. So, first question: the show is over. You take the curtain call. What do you do after a show like this? We'll start with you, Mark.
Yeah. Well, so the first thing as we're exiting off stage, Nico and I kind of reach out for each other and, kind of hug as we walk out. And I think that's important, not just to have the characters finally kind of come to a peaceful resolution, but I think just showing the respect that I think that Nico and I have for each other, and the tremendous discipline that it requires to pull off performances like this. For me, as you mentioned, it's a workout. I'm on stage for all of maybe 2 minutes for the entire show, and just pages and pages and pages of dialogue. But I learned back early on when I was working as a professional actor from Ed Ames, who I was doing the tour of Man of La Mancha with, and watched how he cared for his body, for his voice, to be able to find places where within the show you can rest and get ready for a difficult scene coming up, something that would be emotional or physically demanding. So that's really served me well in this, because otherwise, I'm near retirement age, frankly, and I kind of feel like a truck's hit me after the show is done and I've kind of decompressed.
So, Nico, you do get a little bit of rest on stage. What do you do at the end of the performance?
All right. When the performances end, yep, Mark and I, we do have our embrace at the end of the show, which again, I think is important because not only does it kind of break that immersion of just like we are two actors and we do respect each other, but it's also just like that mutual respect of just like the characters themselves, I think. Because I do think that like in reality, it's a lot less tension between Mozart and Salieri. And of course, Salieri did end up getting more jealous, and his life did kind of become, as a result of not just like his life, but also the play and kind of the legacy that that's brought him. He is kind of the antithesis to Mozart in a sense. So to have that moment with Mark is really important to me because it also is just recognizing, hey, we're done. It's time to go backstage and talk about whatever. And once all said and done, I'm good for a good nap, and it's very nice to kind of get off of there and talk to my castmates because during the second act, I don't want to overshadow what Mark has to do with his 2 minutes of break time, but that second act, I don't have any kind of moment to myself. And even at the end of the show, I'll bring up for a second here. I think the last maybe 6.5 minutes, I'm under a sheet. I'm on that table for a very long amount of time. And you'd think that'd be relaxing, but you'd be surprised how still you have to keep yourself under there just so nobody's not paying attention to Mark. I don't want to take anything away from him while he's having his last little moment.
You two know each other before the show started? Did you meet
Well,
as Salieri and Mozart? Did you meet as Mark and Nico?
well, I actually met as Salieri and Mozart during the callbacks,
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't attend the original reading, I don't think. So I went to the callback, and I believe that J. Daniel Herring, who's the director, I think he paired Nico and me just to read through one scene, and it was just a quick little scene about basically it's setting up the creation of the magic flute and its relationship with the Masonic lodge that they both belong to. And just a quick little scene, but I mean, I recognized immediately, and I mean, I even said to my wife when I went home, I said, I think I'm pretty sure who's going to be Mozart. And lo and behold, when the cast list came out, I was very thrilled. I'd heard nothing but great things about him from my friends in the Fresno State theater community. And, it was evident right from the beginning of rehearsals that we were really going to have, I think, an exceptional show with the two of us kind of knocking heads back and forth.
And Nico, what was it like to meet Mark for the first time?
Extremely intimidating, to be quite honest, because I knew his name far before he knew mine. I think that's fair to say. And even walking into the callback, I do remember, I think both the people I read for ended up getting casted. I think I did read with Alexis for our Constanza scene, but I particularly remember our scene, Mark, because it was just kind of this moment of electricity. And there's a mentor of mine that says there's you can kind of feel that between an actor, like if you put your hand between them, you feel like you're going to get shocked. I kind of felt like I was getting shocked in that moment because it felt very electric between us. And when rehearsal started, I remember being so kind of reserved. I didn't want to kind of make Mark think I'm weird. And now that we're so familiar with each other, I talk about everything in front of him. And I really do. It's really cool to be this connected with someone that I find to be so inspiring, like, and so great at what they do, which goes for Jay Daniel as well.
Mark, as Salieri, there's a point where he's tricking Mozart into thinking that he likes him, that he's even a father figure, perhaps. Is there truth there, or is that just part of the scam?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's certainly a calculation that's involved in it. But actually, honestly, one of my absolute favorite scenes is after Figaro has been debuted and gets a very kind of tepid response from the crowd, especially from the Emperor. And the Emperor gives him a glancing kind of sideways compliment, like you really seem to be coming along. And there's just the two of us on stage, and Mozart asks Salieri, "Well, do you think I'm coming along?" And Salieri has to, at that moment, reveal something really deeply honest and authentic inside him that says that I think the piece is extraordinary. I think it's magnificent, and it kills him to say that. But at the same time, he's kind of saying, look, like recognizes like, and I recognize your genius, and I'm just letting you know, even though it's tearing me up inside, that it's undeniable.
Nico, is Mozart as sort of naive as he's depicted in the play? Do you think he ever suspects?
I think that there is suspecting initially, but I think once he becomes so much more desperate is when he kind of gives in, and like Salieri becomes almost like his only confidant, like his only kind of person in that musical circle who he can confide in and who he can kind of be connected to in such a way. And like Mark pointed out, that one moment where Salieri admits that he thinks that it's great, Mozart doesn't take that and think, yes, it is. He does take it like that, but he takes it so much more egotistically, and he's almost slaps Salieri back in the face for even considering that it's anything below the greatest opera ever written. And so I think it is that ego that kind of not separates the two, but that kind of keeps Mozart and Salieri from admitting they're equals in a sense.
It's very similar to the relationship that John Adams and Thomas Jefferson had, that they were rivals for as the new nation was being developed, and both of them had tremendous egos. They approached things differently. Adams very mercurial, like Mozart. Jefferson very quiet, very studied, very determined, like Salieri. But in the end, they were the dearest of friends, and realized that they had this not only shared experience, but a shared legacy. So, and I think it's a very yin yang thing too. It's the two characters, are decidedly different, and yet fit together to make the whole of this play be something that I just think it's a remarkable piece of theater.
In a way, it's really a story about a child prodigy who was abused, I guess, dragged around almost like being at a circus. And I'm wondering, Nico, if did you find some commonality between what happened back then and what happens today? I mean, we cast little kids when they're 6 or 7 years old in movies, and sometimes I wonder if that kid really wants to be there.
Mm.
Right. I I think that stereotype, that kind of connection, thank God, is a lot less common. Like you see so many people embracing kind of the negativity of that. Jeanette McCurdy, I think, is a great example of just like the antithesis of that, where she was very much forced to be an actress by her mom, and now her book, #1 selling. I'm glad my mom died. Like she is very like I think that kind of mentality is very much almost dead, which I think is great. Honestly, I think as somebody who is doing what they love and like is so like connected with theater in such a way that is beyond like spiritual or beyond like just like I was born to do this. It's just something that I can't imagine not doing. It's like breathing to me. I can't imagine being forced to do this the same way.
But I think that what we're running into now, especially with the explosion of TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram videos, I don't think kids need to be forced into it at all. In fact, my concern is that you see so many of them that think that this is how we need to be famous. Is I can just put together a video and go viral, and then I'll get tons of money and everybody will love me. And they don't realize that there's a price to be paid for that. And I think that's
Mm.
one of the seminal lessons or themes in Amadeus. It's what's the price of genius?
I like to hope that when people watch biographical movies, when they absorb any kind of like popular entertainment, that there's a little bit of sophistication there to realize this is through somebody else's lens.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I wonder, um, and I guess maybe that's one reason why I appreciate the structure of this play, what really happened.
I think it's such an interesting idea to play with, and especially because we're reaching so many people now. Like so many people are coming to see the show, almost an overwhelming amount for me. But like I think it's also just like how many people are leaving, how many perspectives are leaving the audience tonight? You know what I mean? Like how many people are leaving with the same kind of thoughts about what's going on? And I even like one of my castmates brought up a question that interested me, which is how vulgar is Mozart really? How much of this is just Salieri's recalling how vulgar he was, and really he was just more vulgar than they were used to, and he wasn't talking about the his wife and all the blah blah blah, all the dirty nasty junk, but just Salieri was so disgusted by him and how talented he was that he filled his brain with this kind of idea of Mozart, and I thought that was such a you know, such a wow moment.
Mark, what are you eating in
Oh,
the show?
everything.
When, when
So the confections that I eat at the very beginning are actually things that my wife makes, called fat bombs, and they're cream cheese, butter, and some sort of sugar substitute. But I needed them because in the beginning I started eating like regular hard candy, and it just took so long to chew. I needed something that I could digest pretty quickly. But then after that, the crema al mascarpone, as much as I'd like to have a little rum infused um, delicacy during the show, we actually just use it's vanilla pudding
I
basically.
was figuring either pudding or yogurt.
Yeah, and then there's also the capezzoli di Venere, the nipples of Venus. Those are actually just hollowed out pieces of white chocolate See's candy, I think, with a little dollop of chocolate icing or frosting on the top. But again, it's got to be chewed quickly. So, I mean, the first night we were using props and poor Constanza had to eat those things. I just looked like she had a couple of boulders in her mouth. So we managed to refine it to the point where it's easily handled, but still tasty. but I got a definite sugar buzz at the end of every show.
Wine load. Have you ever had this many wines before in a show, Mark?
Oh no, no, no. This
And
is no, but by far. I mean, I had a lot in Man for All Seasons, but
yeah.
this is double, I think,
And how
easily
long
double.
did it take you to, do you feel like to master those or memorize those?
Well, I cheated a little bit because I actually played Salieri back during the Reagan administration. I was very young. I was an equity guest artist, and a theater was doing the show, and they brought me in. And I was 31 years old and thought I just had the world by the tail at the time. And but it's a different script. I mean, most of it's the same, but Peter Shaffer kept, basically working on Amadeus for about 4 or 5 years afterwards. And then I think it was in LA, the LA production was the last iteration. And he finally said, look, I'm done. And that's it. But there were some significant changes and pieces that were just taken out entirely. There was a whole section on Così fan tutte, which is one of Mozart's earlier romantic works that was mentioned in the script that I had back in 1980, I want to say 83, 84. That's not in there anywhere now. So it made it a little bit easier for me to kind of recall what I was doing before, but it's still a load. And actually, the problems that I had weren't with the big monologues. It was for the little, what do you mean? What? Why? How? For what? It just trying to keep those, the different little phrases in their proper positions.
So, Nico, how do you giggle on command?
uh, it's always been a talent of mine. Voices have always been a thing that I've been uh, enamored with, and being able to do them. When I was first starting as an actor, I used to do this big gangsta voice all the time, and I still kind of have it in there somewhere. There would be all these character voices I would do, and just doing the laugh. It's getting as high as I possibly can in my voice, and then just laughing. And that's kind of how I get it out. And it really takes a push. It's got to sound natural. So almost pushing it to get to that natural point where it sounds like it's coming out of you, like it's surprising you a little bit. So yeah, just getting to the highest point and pushing it out.
Geniuses are often, they lead pretty awful lives while they're alive. I mean, they might be revered later on, but people who are more mediocre, who kind of fit in and just, blend into society, you might say that they actually have more pleasant lives. Have you guys thought about that? And which would, if you were given a choice, let's say early on, Mark, if you were a genius or pretty good,
Yeah.
which would you take?
So I've used this story on a number of occasions. I went back. My best friend when I lived and worked in New York City was a guy from my hometown who ended up playing Jean Valjean on Broadway in Les Mis, and still has a wonderful career. I think he's been on tour with Wicked the last few months or so. And then my roommate is a very successful music director and conductor. He was with the producers. He was the lead on Drowsy Chaperone. I'm not sure what he's doing right now. But anyway, we were getting together for a fundraiser back in our hometown of Toledo. And we're sitting around and, Phil was my roommate and said, Mark, if you just stuck around New York, maybe you could, have that kind of Broadway baby life. And I said, yeah, that maybe, I don't know. But I don't know if you've met my wife and my kids. I'm really happy. And I guess I'd rather have that because I'm still given the opportunity to do the things that I believe that the talents that I've been blessed with, but not have to do them for a living and to really go through the stress of where's my next gig coming from and all of the other pressures that kind of go along with that. So I can still enjoy the thing that I love to do the most. I mean, I being on stage is home for me. But I've got a life and I've got good people around me and a wife I adore and terrific kids. I'd much rather have that than being a genius but be messed up.
I guess I'll provide the antithesis to that,
Good
as I
for you.
usually do for Mark. Um, yeah, I think I'd much rather have a kind of a life of greatness, if you will. I'm at this point in my life where like I'm meeting tons of people and I'm making a lot of friends, and a lot of them I'm almost coming to terms with the fact that these aren't going to last forever. And these connections that I have here, if I decide to go elsewhere, aren't going to last anywhere. But the one thing that will last is my talent. I know that it's something that I have and that I will continue to possess unless I decide to throw it all away one day and give up, which I don't foresee happening ever. So I think that there is just like I do want to evolve. I do want to go out and like worry about what my next kind of job is. And I'm already jumping into another show now. Like it's just my brain's always working and always wants to be constantly working as to what I'm going to be doing for like any amount of time. And at this point, I can't really afford to know what it's like to not have another project to be working on. And uh, maybe someday I'll chill out and I'll sit down and I'll be like, you know what? I'm content living here and I'm content living with people that I know and people that I care about and people that love me. But as of right now, I'm a young, spry soul who's ready to get out there, ready to impress a lot of people.
And
So I think
I will be cheering you on every step of the way, buddy.
thank you, Mark.
To kind of wrap things up, I want to ask each of you if there's been a particular reaction to Amadeus from an audience member that has really stuck with you.
Like there are two that definitely come to mind to me, and they're very subtle. Uh, but I think something for me as an actor is for a while I was a very comedic actor. I was in the 39 Steps in high school, and then immediately getting out of that, I was in Comedy of Errors. So I just thought I was going to be a comedy actor. I never thought I was going to be in a drama like Amadeus, or let alone playing Mozart. So I think a big goal for me once I decided this is going to be my career is that I want people to gasp. I want people to be stunned to silence at a point. And we were rehearsing the final scene where I'm dying, and I think there was one day where I finally found like the inflection in my voice that I wanted, and I was just like, that's gonna hit people. That's absolutely. And opening night, what do you know? Not a peep. I think there was one woman who ended up gasping, and I think the moment that really struck me that night was my family was there that night in the front row. My grandparents, who can't really climb stairs, they're always in the front row for my shows. My I looked over at my grandma just because I'm on there and I'm glancing at the audience, and she had tears in her eyes, and it and not to get too emotional or like too personal here, but I think that was just a click for me where it was just I am a real actor. I am doing things that affect people, and that is amazing.
Yeah, for me, so Salieri has a unique relationship with the audience in that he's speaking to them throughout the entire play. And so I think that seeing the immediate reactions of what I'm saying, whether it's laughter, whether it's shock, whether it's disgust, whether it's kind of nodding because they understand it, or even that kind of stunned, my goodness, what am I feeling? What am I witnessing here? That's just it's a constant process, and I really makes me feel uh, fulfilled when I know that the audience is totally engaged. And I can see it in their faces because I'm talking to them. But as far as a reaction, the one that's really stood out to me was my daughter's. And I asked her afterwards, and she just kept shaking her head. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" She goes, "Dad, I'm sorry. That was disturbing." And I'm like, "What do you mean disturbing?" She goes, "No, that's not you. That's not my, I'm looking up there and that's not my dad. I see somebody who's kind of evil, you know?" And it was just really kind of took me back a little bit. And I thought, well, if I could make my daughter forget that it's pop up there. Okay, maybe I'm on the right track.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. Amadeus is running just through February 18th, so just a couple weeks left. And I can tell you, I've run into people around town. The first thing they've said to me is, "Have you seen Amadeus yet?" So it's just a reminder that theater is ephemeral, that this particular production is never going to exist again. Mm-hmm. We're not going to have Nico and Mark in these roles likely again. And I just consider it kind of a privilege to be able to witness that. So thank you.
Thank you.